People often assume that belief in a higher power must be based on a leap of faith, that it can't be based on logic or evidence. However, philosophers have been offering logical proofs for the existence of a higher power for quite some time. Today we consider three. The first, the ontological argument, or the argument by definition. This argument posits that God's existence is built into our very conception of God's nature. For example, if we were to consider the qualities that the creator of the universe or a creator of the universe might have, or any superior deity might have, we would expect them to have several different things. First of all, we would expect them to be very powerful. We would expect them to be very knowledgeable and probably benevolent and good. In fact, if we considered the creator of all this to be the highest of gods and the best of deities and the most perfect of entities, we would expect it to be all-knowing, to be all-powerful, and to be all-good. We would also expect that this being would also actually exist. Now, why do I say that? Well, I say that because existence is built into the concept of something that is of the highest form, that is of the greatest perfection. And so if we understand the concept of God as being that being which there are none greater, well then, that entity must in fact exist, because if we simply had the conception of an entity, that for which there were none greater, but that entity didn't actually exist, well then there would still be the possibility that there would be another entity that would be even greater than that one, the one that had all of those qualities but then also existed. Therefore, by definition, God must exist. That's the argument. Seems a little bit peculiar, but that's the way it's set forth. A second common argument, a classic argument for the existence of God, is called the Cosmological Argument, also known as the argument from first cause. This argument says, look, stuff obviously exists. All this stuff had to come from somewhere, and there are several different candidate explanations. One candidate explanation is that the universe has always existed, that there was no beginning to it, that if we were to look back into time, into history, if we're able to do that, it would just go on and on and on into infinity. However, the concept of infinitive reverse time doesn't make very much sense. It's difficult to comprehend. Rufus, what do you think? An infinite regress of time, would it work? No, I didn't think you'd buy that either. So an infinite regress of time doesn't seem very much sense, and it may just be a limit of our faculties and our capacities, but we're trying to come up with a logical proof here, or a logical explanation for the origins of the universe. And so since this doesn't seem very logical or coherent, we have to discard it. Another explanation is that, well, perhaps the universe brought itself into existence. However, the universe seems to be largely inanimate, and it also seems to have these regularities and what we call natural laws. The matter within the universe seems to behave in a regular fashion, and it doesn't seem, at least based on our own observations, to have the power or the special ability to bring itself into existence. It seems to be a closed system, and therefore it seems to be the case that you would need some sort of an external force to bring the universe into existence. Now, perhaps some scientists are correct when they argue that the universe was once a singularity, and then the event commonly called the Big Bang resulted in the expansion of matter and all these cool planets or the formation of planets from the density of gases and stars and all that fun stuff. Maybe that's an explanation for how the universe actually developed, but that doesn't explain what produced or created perhaps that singularity to begin with, and it doesn't explain what perhaps would have built in those rules or those laws of nature that would allow and require existence to unfold into the planets, into the constellations and such, as it did. We need an external force, and we need an external force that is not itself subject to the same rule of causation, that it had to have some cause itself. Because if we said, well, everything needs a creator, and God created the universe, well, if we apply that principle consistently, we would have to say that God himself would also need a creator. And if we apply that principle consistently again, we'd have to say, well, that God would have to have a creator, and that God would have to have a creator, and that one, and that one, and that one. And then we would have an infinite regress problem similar to the one about time in the reverse into the infinite, not making very much sense. And so we need a first cause, what philosophers have called an unmoved mover, and that's what God is. That's the argument anyway. Last, we consider the teleological argument, or the argument from design. And this argument builds on some of the considerations that we just considered under the examination of the cosmological argument. And the argument by design observes the fact that matter in the universe seems to behave in a regular, predictable fashion. Bodies fall through the sky at a predictable rate. They reach a terminal velocity that scientists have measured and they can use in calculations. Scientists understand how various chemicals interact with one another in ways that they can use to harness the energy that chemical reactions can produce. They can make concrete, or they can make gasoline and combustion engines, etc. And it's because the universe has these natural commonalities or natural laws that seem to regulate the behavior of everything within the universe. Well, if the universe just happened about by chance, if it was the result of just, I guess that's the best word, just the result of random chance, then we would expect things to be in atrophy. We wouldn't expect to see order, and we especially wouldn't expect to see things that were so orderly that they could produce perhaps life, they could produce perhaps intelligent life, conscious life, etc. But we don't even have to go that far. We can simply observe the regularity of the way matter interacts with other matter and the laws of physics and chemistry and such in the natural world. And all of this suggests some sort of an intelligent creator behind it, some sort of an intelligent force that would have, at the very least had to have set up these different laws and such so they would operate in this fashion. Such is the teleological argument, also the argument from design. All right, a very brief presentation of three classic and common arguments for the existence of God. We didn't at all delve into the criticisms of these arguments, and there are very many criticisms out there. I would like for you to think through these arguments based on your own considerations first, and whether you're inclined to believe in a deity or inclined to reject a deity, please evaluate these arguments based on their own strength. Just because one's good or all of them are good, or just because one bad or all of them are bad, shouldn't have any ultimate bearing, or definitely won't have any ultimate bearing on whether or not a deity actually exists or doesn't exist. And there are also other arguments out there that are, of course, for a deity, and also arguments out there that reject the existence of a deity. But in any case, please think through these arguments according to your own lights before delving into drawing on the wisdom and the analysis of others. Thanks so much for your interest in philosophical theology.